and welcome to the Leopard Spots podcast, presented by Fractional, a leading provider of risk and compliance services to fintechs, banks, and crypto firms. Join the founders, owners, investors, and senior executives as they dive deep into the world of business and entrepreneurship. Trust me, these guys have seen it all, and they're here to share their wisdom with you. So, let's get going. Please welcome your host, Ryan Simo.
Welcome to the Leopard Spots podcast. I am your host, Ryan Simo. This is the 2024 edition, first episode of 2024, and I'm really pleased with our next guest. I'm going to jump into an intro of Jessica here in just a second, but this podcast is brought to you by Fractional.co. We are a leading provider of risk and compliance, leadership, and consulting services to the fintech industry, the BaaS, banking as a service, banking industry, crypto, as well as private equity. So if you'd like to learn more, please visit us at Fractional.co. And if you'd like to sponsor a future episode, please reach out to us at info@Fractional.co. Well, our next guest, we were just lamenting how old we've all gotten, as Jessica just reminded me that I believe I interviewed her 7 years ago when she was coming into M&T. So time flies, but I remember the interview vividly, and we were just joking off camera about some of the things that happened in the interview. And she said, "You remember that?" I said, "I think I remember it." So anyhow, it's really great to have you on the show, Jessica. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Ryan. I'm so honored. If you
Absolutely.
don't know, Ryan was my former manager's manager. So
True.
it's an honor to be invited back. I guess I didn't screw up that much.
No, not at all. And so I'm going to jump in here and just give your bio, and then we'll just jump into all things that you're doing, things that you've done, things that you're doing, because it's a super interesting story. And so, but Jessica is the founder and managing director of Steadfeather Capital, which we'll get into the naming there and try to learn more about that. It's a search fund that provides one business owner a succession opportunity by acquiring a single company and operating it for the long term. Jessica is a San Fran Bay Area native and began her career in anti-money laundering back 7 years ago in the compliance department at M&T and in the credit division of M&T Bank in Buffalo, which is where I'm producing this podcast right now, as Jessica's in San Francisco. Jessica was a board director for the Western New York Veterans Housing Coalition and the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Erie County, New York. She completed her undergraduate studies at Yale University, and she obtained her MBA and Master of Public Policy dual degree in 3 years on a full scholarship from the University of Michigan, go Wolverines, where she co-founded the Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Club at the Ross School of Business and was awarded Club President of the Year by the Ross MBA Council. So, and there's a whole bunch more as well that Jessica's done. And interestingly, Jessica, I was just thinking, so I have my MBA in strategic management and public policy. So we have that in common from George Washington, but also too, I spent, I think it was about a month or so at the Ross School of Business in an executive leadership program, and loved the University of Michigan. I thought it was great. And the business school is outstanding. So welcome to the show and the first video podcast. You're the first video podcast contestant this year.
It's a huge honor. So, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So Jessica, you know, as we go back 7 years, I'll never forget, we were interviewing folks for the management development program at M&T, something I had gone through years and years before. And in the department that I was running, we always had an MDP that would come through, and we get sent resumes. And I remember getting your resume, and I thought, okay, Yale and from San Francisco, and here we are in Buffalo. And then you came in to do the interview, and I knew within probably 30 seconds, I'm like, oh yeah, we gotta offer Jessica this job. We all agreed. I think there was 3 of us in the room at the time doing the interview, and we all agreed, oh, we have to offer. And I think at the time you might have had offers from different places like Amazon or Apple. I forget where it was, but a lot of different places.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I remember when we got the call and it said, Jessica's accepted the offer. We're like, whoa, this is great. And so the rest is history. You joined us. And I think at the time after, in my interview notes, I may have even put, she will be a great addition to the team and future president of the United States one day. That was my, so don't disappoint me. But but anyway, I do remember it like it was yesterday. But welcome to the show. And So let's jump into it. Take us back as far as you'd like to go. Maybe how you got to Yale, what you were thinking when you got to Yale, your upbringing, and then how, in a very quick period of time, how that's translated to all the stuff that you're doing now. And then we'll jump into Steadfeather Capital and all the things going on with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's such a long story how I got to Yale. So I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. My parents are immigrants, so I was a first generation born here in the United States. First in my family to kind of go through the U.S. school system here. I went to California public high school kid through and through. How I got to Yale was kind of a mixed bag. Fun fact, Yale was not my first choice school. Do you want to guess what the first choice was?
Oh, I do. Harvard?
No, but that's a good guess. Everybody guesses that.
University of Buffalo?
Also a good guess. Unfortunately, no. I think about Buffalo later. But I'll tell you, it was kind of an unconventional choice. I had actually grown up really wanting to go to West Point, the U.S. Military Academy. And I remember in my senior year of high school thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go through this application process. I was all over it. Essays were great. Scores were great. Got my physical fitness exam. Passed it. It was wonderful. Got my congressional nomination. And a couple weeks later, got a letter in the mail from West Point that said, oh, you're one of our most outstanding candidates this year. We authorize you for an overnight visit. Also, come join these luncheons with the cadets. I was so stoked. A couple weeks later, I got another letter that said, just kidding, you failed your optical exam. And so I was too blind. It was too nearsighted. They actually, the panelists that had nominated me for my congressional nomination, they actually really liked me. And so they were very kind to submit me through there's a medical waiver process that you can try to get through. I went back to the eye doctor and they said, nah, girl, your nearsightedness is just not going to cut it.
Oh, wow.
So down went my dreams of going to West Point. However, that was sort of, I guess the ethos behind that was, well, I've never taken for granted the fact that all the opportunities I've had have been because I was lucky enough to be born in this country, because my parents moved here not speaking English and not knowing anybody, simply to give their children a better future. And so for me, in my mind, it was always, well, what better way to give back to this country than basically writing a blank check with your life? And for a long time, I thought that was the only way to give back. Right. And then so when I ended up at Yale, I ended up majoring in political science and education studies, and I learned all about public service. Maybe this is where I want to go and give back in that way as a civilian. And so my summer internships in DC. But I always thought I was going to end up doing something in education policy, maybe working for the Department of Ed. I don't know what happened. I think it was actually, I know exactly what happened. Being a first generation student at an institution like Yale, I remember waking up one day, I think it was my junior year, walked on a campus on a random Tuesday. Everybody was wearing suits. And I looked around and I said, okay, I missed the memo. What's happening? Why are we all dressed up? And my classmate said, oh, today's consulting and investment banking recruiting day. Didn't you know? And I said, well, clearly not. I'm still here in my sweats.
You didn't get the memo?
No, I did not get the memo. But it was sort of from that moment on that I realized, okay, well, I've clearly missed the deadline for all of the consulting firms and most of the banks that are recruiting. But that's where I kind of got into my mind that, okay, well, maybe banking is where I'm supposed to end up after school. It seems to be what everybody else wants to do. And so lo and behold, when I saw the posting for M&T Bank was still accepting applications, I said, oh my gosh, it's a bank. Let me apply.
Perfect.
And so I had applied to a random smattering of jobs that year, and you had a very good memory. I did get an offer from Amazon, and when I got the offer from M&T, it was sort of like, well, I think I'm supposed to go work at a bank at all costs. So M&T, here I come. They said they were a New York-based bank, and I thought, okay, I'll be so close to all my friends in New York City. This will be great. Little did I know that Buffalo.
Little did you know you were closer to Michigan than you were New York City. Yeah. Right.
But it ended up being, honestly, going to M&T and moving to Buffalo ended up being one of the best decisions of my life. I'm so grateful I ended up at the bank and on your team specifically. Actually, correction, you were not my manager's manager. You were my boss's boss's boss.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. I just played along. I was just everybody did the other stuff. So
Oh my gosh, no, he was leading the charge at M&T, and I'm so lucky to be in that division under you. It was a fantastic
yeah,
experience, and I think moving to Buffalo was truly one of the best decisions of my life. There's something
yeah,
about packing it up and moving to a place where you've never been, you don't really know anyone, and
yeah.
starting a new chapter from there.
And it's interesting because I'm not a Buffalo native either, and neither were you. But I think much like, take away the snow news and everything else that people read about or hear about, it's a really great place. So I came out of college and came here too, not knowing anybody, and really it's become a second home. It was home now, but I'm saying it's almost like an adopted hometown, if you will. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So you're at the bank, you're kind of getting exposed to general corporate America. Um, there was probably a point at which, or was there a point at which, because even based on your background and what you described in terms of how you got to Yale and what you wanted to do, you probably, I'm guessing, always had this little tinge of there's something in the future, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether it's something other than, let's say, corporate America. Did you ever have that feeling? And if you did, when did you start to give thought to maybe the long range? Hey, 5 years from now, what do I want to be doing? 10 years from now, what do I want to be doing? And you've got a lot of runway left as it is, but did you ever start to have those thoughts while you were at the bank?
I did. Yeah, that's a really great question. There was a time where I thought, speaking of adopted home, I thought I was going to be a Buffalo lifer.
Oh,
And I,
wow. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
the most
that's great.
unexpected candidate too. Because I remember I rolled up to Buffalo and everybody met me and they said, "Well, Buffalo doesn't see a lot of young people. They don't see a lot of
Yeah,
Ivy League grads. They
right.
certainly don't see anybody from California." So I
Right.
show up and everybody goes, "Welcome, child. Are you lost? What are you doing here?"
Yeah, exactly.
That meant I got to grow my professional career very quickly and under your
Hmm.
watchful eyes. So that
Yep.
was
Yep.
fantastic. Moving to Buffalo allowed me to, I became a homeowner and a landlord at age
I
20.
know. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember I
Did you,
rolled
did
up one day. I
you,
was like, right, I'm
did you,
buying a house.
yeah. Did you sell the place or did you sell it or do you still have it?
No, I still own it. I actually have a couple more properties now. So mini landlord.
Oh gosh, we should deviate off and talk about real estate. You probably know more about that too, but
So I had
that's great.
that, and Buffalo also. I got to sit on two different nonprofit
Yeah,
boards, the Western New York Veterans Housing Coalition and the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Erie County. I was part of a social club there, the Saturn Club. In
that's
no
right.
other place would I be allowed, as a 23-year-old to be in any of these places. And so I'm so
Right.
grateful for all the opportunities I got from Buffalo. And I think what I started thinking of, I thought I was going to be there for a while.
Mhm.
I actually was really happy to be in the anti-money laundering compliance division because
Yeah.
for me, it was the perfect mix between government and business and regulation. And so I thought, okay, this is probably it. Um, the real reason why I left, if you're in Buffalo, it's fantastic. It's super family friendly,
Hmm.
very affordable. It's a little rough if you're in your 20s, ambitious, and you're single.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'm not in my 20s and I'm not single, so yeah, yeah,
That was a
exactly.
little hard, but I would say I didn't even know that business school was a thing or getting your MBA was a thing
Right.
until I got to the bank. Then I met people like you who had an MBA that I realized,
Hmm.
oh, wait, actually, there's this cool educational opportunity that you can go to get that
Hmm.
additional education. And then I thought about coming back to the bank if I were to go to grad school because in addition to the management development program, M&T has
Yeah,
the executive associate program,
that's right.
which is a similar gold star fast track program for people who come out of business school. So I thought, all right, that's the actual track you want to be on because if you look at the M&T C-suite, everybody came from that program, right?
Right. That's right. That's absolutely right. So you go to Michigan and you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you're thinking about starting something. Walk us through that, or how did you get to that point?
Sure, absolutely. So when I was applying to grad schools, because I was inspired by my time at the Enhanced Due Diligence Division, I actually thought I wanted to be a financial regulator. And
Oh wow.
so I applied specifically to MBA and Master of Public Policy dual degree programs. And Michigan was one of those places where it every single graduate school at the university is a top 10 program. So you know when you go there that when you're walking around, you bump into a law student. Okay, they're going to be a top 10 attorney one day. Bump into a med student. Okay, top
Mhm.
10 med school. And it really was this ability to be among such people of high caliber across different disciplines that I thought was super attractive. Michigan was also very generous with the scholarship, and so I said, okay, there's no other place to go but there.
Right. That always helps.
Yeah.
That always helps.
That always helps for sure.
So let's kind of jump into the founding of Steadfeather Capital. But before we get into that, the name, love to know if there's a significance to the name, because people ask me like, why is this podcast called Leopard Spots? And the short answer is, I went to Lafayette. We were the only mascot in the country named with a leopard mascot.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just came to mind. So I said, Leopard Spots. But how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, happy to tell you about your name, and happy to tell you. I realized I didn't quite answer your question on how I came to this path, but Steadfeather. So if you look at every private equity firm, all of their names are some combination of color plus nature feature capital. So think Blue Mountain Capital, Green River Capital, Red Rock Capital. And so I spent months trying to come up with some iteration of these elegant nature featurey names. And I kept running into walls where so many combinations were taken. There was one day where I woke up and I said, all right, it's going to be West Emerald Capital. There's no way somebody's thought of this two-word combination. I Google it, taken. And at that point, I would go, okay, it's time to make up a word. And so I said, okay, we've got to make up a word. I really like the ethos of dedication and commitment that comes with the word steadfast. Mm-hmm. But I also want to emphasize that doing what I'm doing now, because I'm running my own firm, I get to be very agile and adaptable. Mm-hmm. And the feather can very much symbolize that. So I said, all right, we'll call it steadfast, but make it Steadfeather. You smush it together, you get a pretty elegant and regal name. And now if you Google me, because it doesn't exist, if you Google Steadfeather, it's the only thing that shows up. So search engine optimization is prime there.
Yes. And search engine optimization, as I've learned, is so important. And a lot of, podcasts actually help that, by the way. So FYI.
Yeah.
Doing podcasts, hosting podcasts, listening to podcasts, whatever. You're okay. Right. I didn't realize that the directional, the color, that's interesting.
Yeah. Now you'll start to see it everywhere you go. Look at those private equity names.
Well, and now, how about your logo? Because I can tell you, mine's literally AI generated. There was a site and you could just type in everything that you're thinking about in terms of your company, and it just gives you like 1,000 different things. And this one came up and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. How did you come up with your logo?
Oh, thank you. I actually did the first draft myself. I was playing around with words. I was literally sketching on pen and paper, playing around with the words, trying to figure out how to make them interconnected. And of course, mine looked like a child's drawing. So once I had the rough outline, I ended up outsourcing it to a freelancer on, I think it was Fiverr. And I said,
Fiverr, hey, I use them all the time. Yep.
Make this look professional. And they rolled back a couple different edits and iterations. And I said, all right, this is it. Nice and easy.
Great. and I'll tell you, that's a pro tip from one entrepreneur to another. Fiverr is great.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I should have them sponsor this now that we're giving them such. But it's great. I mean, I think I've had work done. If I had to count the countries where people have done work, I mean, obviously, I have folks in the U.S. that have done some stuff. I had Sri Lanka. I had Israel. I had India. I think I had Bangladesh. I mean, it's crazy what you can find and the skills that people have all around the world that just have time to do it. And it's great. I loved it. Okay. So now let's jump into the meat of it. Tell us about Steadfeather. Tell us about how you've been doing. Tell us specifically like the types of things that you look for, the value proposition that you provide, that when you're talking to potential customers or businesses that you'd buy into. Walk us through that, because I'm super interested to learn about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll backtrack a little bit and tell you how I got here. So no, I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship until I got to grad school. And I actually, I came into grad school with an early internship offer from PIMCO. So I was on the investment management track. And about midway through my first year, I saw this posting for an information session that was very cryptically titled Private Equity Firm Headquartered in San Mateo, California. I didn't know what private equity was at the time, and I'd never heard of a company headquartered in San Mateo, which is a town next to where I grew up because it's suburbia. So I thought
Yep.
that's a little suspicious, but I'm going to show up. So I pop
Hmm.
into this information session, and it ended up being Anacapa Partners, which is a big search fund investor. And that's when they told me, "Did you know you could go raise money and go buy a small business?" And I thought, "What? This is so cool. How come nobody's ever told me about this? I want to do this." So I ended up interning for both PIMCO and Anacapa that summer. Loved my time at Anacapa, and I said, wow, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Um, Sort of talked myself out of it, and then thought, well, going into my second year of grad school, wouldn't it be a waste of the MBA to not take advantage of all the recruiting opportunities that exist? Should probably get a normal job first and then be entrepreneurial later. That's how I ended up at Goldman Sachs in their private wealth management division. And that's when I realized, ooh, I don't really want to be the private wealth advisor. It was a great experience, but I want to be the client. How can I be the client? And so all their clients are owners and CEOs. So I said, okay, maybe that's what I should do. And kind of how I got into this is it aligned really well with sort of what I was looking to do with my life. I mean, I'd spent years trying to figure out, well, I know I want to leave this world a better place. What's that little corner of the universe where I can do that? And, some people spend their lives researching cures to cancer. Some people spend their lives battling, finding the solution for homelessness and hunger. And for me, it was this recognition of, okay, we have this silver tsunami of business owners who are retiring, and 99.9% of American companies are small businesses. So if these owners don't end up selling their businesses, they have to shut them down. And that's just such a huge loss to the lifeblood of our country that for me, it was this realization of, okay, well, my 2 cents contribution to the world can be buying and running one of these small businesses and giving life into the next chapter that it might not otherwise have. And so what Steadfeather is it is a search fund. So I raised a fund with the purpose of acquiring a business that I will then personally own and operate as CEO after acquisition. So for me, this is a career choice. I'm shopping for my next career, if you
Right.
will.
Right. That's a really fascinating. Is that a model that exists? I hadn't heard of. I mean, when I was researching and seeing what you were doing and everything, I guess I hadn't heard of a model like that before. Is it something else? Is there other players out there in the market that do very similar things?
Yeah, so it's actually been around for a while. So the model
Okay.
started in the 1980s at the Harvard and Stanford business schools, but
Okay.
it really has only in the past year or so started getting really, really popular, particularly among MBA students. I think there's this movement to realize that, oh, okay, well, a lot of us want to be entrepreneurial. A lot of us want to be, have that authority over our own destinies and to control our own lives. And
Yeah.
not all of us, I like to say, I'm not creative enough to make the baby startup, but I can adopt
Right.
a teenager that exists and grow it into the full blown adult.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
There really
So
is
do
this
each.
alternative path to entrepreneurship.
So when you raised the fund, or these folks that you knew maybe through business school or connections you had made along the way, walk us through how you were able to identify potential investors and.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of my investors I actually met through business school,
Okay.
particularly through my first internship at Anacapa. Luckily enough, I did well enough in my internship that they were happy enough to come back to be one of my anchor investors. So my cap
Right.
table right now is about 40 to 50% institutional investors, about a third are family office, and the rest are high net worth individuals.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
That's
it's a
great.
good mix.
That is a good mix. And then so when you do something like this, do you have, well, let me back up. What types of companies? So you hit on the fact that 99% of the businesses are small businesses, and then you may have a lot of these single operator, single owner type businesses. They have nowhere to pass it off to, so they close. Is there a particular segment that you see this in? Is it in the trades? Is it I mean, where are you finding those types of businesses? Where do they tend to reside, in what industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So best case scenario really is retiring business owners whose kids don't want to get into the business. And that's when I show up
Yeah.
and I say, "Hi, I'm the daughter
Yeah.
you wish you had. I will buy an
Right. Yeah,
operation
exactly.
and be your
That's
exit
great.
succession plan." I've raised a traditional search fund, so what I'm targeting really is more in that lower middle market segment. So a little bigger than your mom and pop and bigger than a startup. It's about that 5 to 50 million revenue range, or if
Okay.
you were in the private equity world, the 2 to 10 million in EBITDA. That's the
Okay.
size we're looking for. And generally, B2B services or software is sort of where we're looking. Some people come into it with the industry thesis. I am pretty agnostic on industry. For me, I think, and I am geographically mobile. So wherever I acquire a company, I will relocate to. Really the
Okay.
only criteria for me beyond size is because this is my career and because I'm a very purpose-driven person, I know that I want to be excited about my work when I walk into the office every day. And so for me, it's really important to find a company that is doing some sort of mission critical work for this world. And that mission criticality comes across in so many sectors. My background, for example, is a good fit for things in education or government services, both of which are very necessary. But everybody needs senior living homes. We all need medical equipment transporters. We all need refrigerated trucking to transport our food safely from one place to another. So things like that. I call it the unsexy but necessary businesses.
Right. Well, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so I'm curious. So you have, is the idea to take the money that you've raised and identify just one company and go there, or is it to do it with potentially multiple companies depending on your level of the raise that you've done?
Absolutely. So the goal is to start with one.
Okay.
um, and I guess people can take it in a couple different directions. So the goal is to start with one. And I think this is where my value proposition becomes very clear to business owners. So I do well with founders who, they have an emotional attachment to their business. If you're a founder,
Mhm.
you've built up your company over the last
Yeah.
20 years, you care a lot about your employees and your business. And a lot of times these founders are a bit afraid of selling to private equity, which is known to come in, slash costs, lay people off. Versus
Yep.
I say, well, I'm younger and I know I'm less experienced. So I know I need to prioritize your people, take care of them, ensure they stay, and just bring in my fresh ideas to grow the business to the next level. And I
Mhm.
think these owners also like the fact that I'm only focusing on one business because once I acquire this one, it becomes my career. I'm dedicating all my time and energy to this one rather than their business becoming one of several in a portfolio in a PE portfolio, for
Mhm.
example.
Mhm. Well, that was my next question, which is, when you think about a traditional PE firm, they raise a fund, they go out, they do what they do, and what you can correct me here, but usually it's what 3 to 5 year window from the point at which they make the investment to doing whether it's flipping it again or selling it or whatever. Is that similar to what you're doing? That Steadfeather Capital says, "Hey, look, we found the place we want to invest. We found the company. Is there a timeline in mind for which you would say we've put this
Yeah.
place and we put the company in a better place, or no?"
Hmm. So there are also different approaches. I would say average hold time, I do see between 4 to 7 years because usually in
Okay.
that window, will have grown the company enough to a place where it becomes attractive to even bigger buyers. However, I
Mhm.
would prefer to take a longer term approach. For example, so if I buy a company and I really enjoy what I'm doing, um, I'll probably do a recap, maybe buy out some of my bigger institutional investors, the ones that have a timeline to return capital to their LPs, and then I can just stay on as operator for the long term. And so that's the
Mhm.
kind of mindset I want to go into it with.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I asked you about which industries. You had mentioned B2B, software, things of that sort. And I know you said geographically you would relocate to wherever they may be. Have you found that those types of businesses tend to be concentrated in certain geographies, whether it be California or wherever it may be, or that
Yeah,
it's kind of
so
agnostic? Okay.
they're pretty agnostic. They're all over the board. I think a myth that's been running through the search fund community for a long time, and a big hesitation for some people to get into this for a while was they thought, well, yikes, if I do this, I have to relocate. What if I have to relocate to the middle of nowhere? I'm not trying to be,
Right.
living in the desert by myself. But you think
Right.
about it, and a lot of these big successful businesses, they are pretty concentrated around the large metropolitan areas. They might
Mhm.
not be directly in that urban city center, but they might be, an hour out, like say in the San Francisco area. Maybe if finding something within the city itself is a bit difficult, but I go a little farther. Sacramento's probably got a lot of great prospects, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and depending on where you want to look, the Midwest has so many fantastic candidates, and a lot of people who haven't had experience living there might shy away from looking there. But I actually got really close on a business that was out in Michigan. I thought I was going to move back, so
Wow.
just.
That was what I was going to ask you. How close have you gotten, or how close are you to finding the right one? So there was one in Michigan, you said.
Yeah, there was one in Michigan. It was a government supplier. I was really excited about it. I had a great relationship with the seller. It's not fully dead. It's kind of gotten put on hold. I had a great relationship to the seller where, every time he got new machinery, he would send me a picture of the new machines. When his daughter graduated, he sent me a selfie of them.
Oh,
I flew
geez.
out to have dinner with this owner and his wife a couple months ago. And that's when he said, "Oh, Jessica, I still want to sell, but I'm expecting a big 2024. So I'd like to have that additional year of revenue for my retirement planning. We have two options here. So A, we can revisit this in a year, or B, you can join as CEO now with the option of buying us out in 2025," which was
Oh,
very, very flattering, honestly. And I'm
yeah.
very, and we're still on great terms. And so we'll probably revisit that in a year.
That's great. That's really
Yeah.
interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, but
So,
it's a lot like finding a marriage, you can only have one. Gotta pick the right
right. Depends on the state, right? I think there's a state.
one.
But so let me ask you this. So you've been at this now. If you had to say, for people that are listening, let's say maybe thinking about going off on their own and doing something. Maybe they're sitting in corporate America. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're in a transition phase or what have you. Are there two or three big takeaways, things that you've learned about yourself or about business since you started this journey that you would share with people that are thinking about doing something on their own?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing I would say is you get on this journey and it's pretty unpredictable, right? I go up to people and I say, "Hi, I'm Jessica. I don't have a job. I don't know what kind of business I'm going to buy. I have
Right.
no idea where.
Right.
Everything's just
Right.
up there."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's very uncertain, but with that, it's also very liberating because, and
Yeah.
I don't even think I realized how self-driven I could be until I sat down, started this on day one. Like the fund was raised and I was beginning. I said, okay, well, my calendar is blank. What is it that I have to do with my time in
Mhm.
order to get to where I want to be? How do I schedule my days? Because there's nobody to tell me what to do, right? It
Right.
really is just very self-driven. And so for me, it was recognizing like, okay, well, time to pull in my powers of prioritization. What are important things I should be doing right now? What should go on the back burner? And things like that has been kind of an awakening to see what has become more and more important to me over time.
You just hit it. Anybody I've done this with, who I've talked to, most of whom are folks that have started their own businesses, I think you just hit it. There's this freedom of, you control your own destiny. The success rises or falls with you as an individual, which is probably, in my mind, the most significant benefit of doing something on your own, because you don't rely on anybody. I mean, obviously, when you get clients, certainly in the business that we're in, you answer to them. I mean, they're the ones that are employing you to do the work for them. So from that perspective, certainly. But I think you really hit it home there, because I think that when you, like you said, you look at your calendar when you first start a company, you're like, what do I do now? You know, how, um,
And there's no one to tell you what to do, right?
when there's no annual reviews for them to tell you either. So it's like, you're really on your own, but
Yeah.
which is also the most liberating thing in the world too. Both giving annual reviews and getting them. It's like, you know what?
Yeah.
That's the part I don't miss. But so as we kind of wrap up here, I was going to ask you this before, but I'm curious now as you talk about it. Do you have people on some sort of a contingency basis that are out there potentially looking for the deal that you're looking to do, like trying to find companies, or is it just you, or is it word of mouth through some of your investors? How are you actually going about doing that?
Everybody has different ways of doing it. So traditionally, people have, they live at home, they work from home, they send out mass emails in this sort of spray and pray approach.
Yeah.
For me right now, it's just me. Plus,
Yep.
I have 11 interns, so they help me with the email
That's
campaign.
nice. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
Very grateful to my team for doing
Yeah.
that. I think I would drive myself nuts if I sat at my computer all day and just sent out emails. And so I like to
Right.
get out there. I like to meet people.
Right.
So I've actually 6 months into my search. It's been pretty good. I've had the most success actually just meeting people out there in the wild in real life and people being really kind to make warm introductions for me that way.
That's awesome. So if people listening to this do want to make an introduction because they're listening and say, hey, actually, I have a family member there, or, whatever the case is, what's the best way? And we'll put this in the show notes and whatnot, but what's the best way for them to get in touch with you, to share that information with you?
Absolutely. I'd be super grateful if anybody listening wanted to get in touch or make an introduction. Best way to find me. So my website is www.steadfeather.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. That sounds great. And by the way, note she said .com, and people always say, why'd you do .co? I don't know. So somebody along the way said it was cooler. So I said, oh, wow, I'll do that then. But so anyhow, but the number of people that have said, hey, I sent you an email and you didn't get it. And I said, did you put .com? Oh, yeah, I did. That's probably why. But anyway, so, well, Jessica, this has been great. For a variety of reasons. To reconnect, and I saw all the stuff that you were doing. So this was perfect timing. And B, I'm really excited for the work that you're doing and wish you a ton of success. And you'll have to let me know when you get that business. I'm going to be very interested to know what it is, how you're doing, where you've relocated to. And I have a sneaking suspicion. Wouldn't it be wild if it was in Buffalo? Which could happen.
Pretty wild. Which I would not be mad about. I've got a home there. So.
I was going to say, this would be an easy move. You could just have two places, right?
Yeah.
But well, thanks so much for your time, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And if there's anything that I can do to help, certainly let me know. And if you're looking to acquire a risk compliance company, I know somebody. So
I'll hit you up. Thank you so much again, Brian, for having me. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely.
Both of us go from M&T Bank to now starting both of our entrepreneurial journeys. So here we are.
Here we are. And good luck to you, Jessica. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Leopard Spots podcast. If you liked what you heard, then be sure to like, subscribe, leave a rating, and visit our website at fractional.co. As a founder, a senior leader at Fortune 500 companies, and executive at high-growth fintechs, Ryan loves to talk business and share these stories with you. That's all for now, folks. Catch you next time on the Leopard Spots podcast.